The old rooster crowed loudly as the sun came up over Samuel Washington's small farm. Samuel opened his tired eyes and looked around his empty bedroom. The bed felt too big for just one person. It had been 3 years since his wife Martha died, but he still missed her every single morning. Samuel was a tall, strong man with kind brown eyes and hands that were rough from working hard every day. He was 45 years old, but sometimes he felt much older. Life had not been easy for him. His small farm barely made enough money to pay for food and bills. Many nights, Samuel went to bed hungry so he could save every penny he earned. The farmhouse was old and needed many repairs. The roof had holes that let rain come inside. The windows were broken and covered with old newspapers. Samuel's grandfather had built this house many years ago, and Samuel was proud to live here. But keeping it running was getting harder every day. Samuel got out of bed and put on his worn-out work clothes. His boots had holes in them, but he could not buy new ones. He looked at himself in the small, cracked mirror on his wall. His face looked tired and sad. "Another day," he said to himself quietly. He walked to the kitchen and made a small cup of coffee with the last bit of coffee beans he had. There was no sugar or milk, because those cost too much money. Samuel drank the bitter coffee and ate a piece of old bread for breakfast. His stomach was still hungry, but this was all the food he could allow himself today. After breakfast, Samuel walked outside into the cool morning air. October was always cold on his farm. The trees were changing colors, and leaves were falling everywhere. Samuel looked at his small fields where he grew vegetables and corn. This year's harvest was not very good because there had not been enough rain. He was worried about how he would make money this winter. Samuel's farm was very small. He had 2 old chickens that sometimes laid eggs, and 1 old cow named Bessie who gave a little bit of milk each day. That was all the animals he had left. 3 years ago, when Martha was alive, they had many more animals. But Samuel had to sell most of them to pay for Martha's medicine when she was sick. As Samuel walked toward the old barn, he thought about his wife. Martha had been the most beautiful and kind woman he had ever known. She had long black hair and a smile that made him feel happy even on the worst days. They had been married for 15 years before she got sick with pneumonia. Samuel had tried everything to save her, but the doctors said there was nothing they could do. "I miss you so much, Martha," Samuel whispered as he walked. He talked to her every day, even though she was gone. It made him feel a little less lonely. The barn was old and made of wood that was turning gray from age. Samuel's grandfather had built this barn too many years ago. It was where Samuel kept his few animals and stored his farming tools. The big wooden doors were heavy and hard to open because they were old and warped. Samuel grabbed the metal handle and pulled hard to open the barn door. The door made a loud creaking sound as it slowly opened. Sunlight poured into the dark barn and Samuel stepped inside. Then he saw something that made him stop breathing for a moment. There, in the corner of the barn, sleeping on a pile of old hay, was a young woman. She was wearing a beautiful white wedding dress that was now dirty and torn. Her long brown hair was messy and had pieces of hay in it. Even in sleep, Samuel could see that she had been crying because there were dried tears on her cheeks. Samuel stood very still, not knowing what to do. He had never seen this woman before in his life. How did she get into his barn? Why was she wearing a wedding dress? Was she hurt or in some kind of trouble? The woman was young, maybe 25 years old. Her skin was very pale, and Samuel could see that she was white. This made him worried. In their small town, white people and black people did not often talk to each other. Some white people were very mean to black people. Samuel wondered if this woman would be afraid of him or angry when she woke up. As Samuel watched, the sunlight that came through the barn door hit the woman's face. She moved a little and made a soft sound. Then her eyes opened slowly. They were green like the color of grass in spring. When the woman saw Samuel standing there, she sat up very quickly. Fear filled her green eyes, and she pulled her wedding dress around herself like a blanket. Samuel could see that she was shaking, either from cold or from being scared. "Please don't hurt me," the woman said in a very quiet voice. Her voice was soft and educated, like she came from a wealthy family. Samuel quickly raised both his hands in the air to show that he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you, miss," he said in his gentlest voice. I promise you that. But I need to know what you are doing in my barn. The woman looked around the barn as if she was remembering where she was. Then she looked back at Samuel. She could see in his kind brown eyes that he was telling the truth about not hurting her. I'm sorry, she said, starting to cry again. I know I shouldn't be here. I just had nowhere else to go. I was so scared and tired, and when I saw your barn, I thought I could rest here for just one night. Samuel's heart felt heavy with sympathy for this young woman. He could see that she was in real trouble. Whatever had happened to her, it was something very bad. What's your name? Samuel asked softly. Elizabeth, the woman answered, wiping tears from her eyes. Elizabeth Harper, and yesterday was supposed to be my wedding day. Samuel felt confused. Supposed to be? What happened? Elizabeth started crying. Harder. Everything went wrong. Everything was ruined. I have no home to go to now. I have no money, no family who will help me, and nowhere to sleep. I'm sorry for coming into your barn without asking. I know it was wrong. Samuel looked at this young woman in her dirty wedding dress, crying and afraid, and he made a decision that would change both of their lives forever. He could not leave her alone and scared no matter what other people might think. Come inside the house, Samuel said kindly. You look cold and hungry. Let me make you some breakfast and you can tell me what happened. Then we'll figure out what to do next. Elizabeth looked at Samuel with surprise. She had expected him to tell her to leave immediately, but instead, this stranger was offering to help her when she needed it most. Elizabeth looked at Samuel with wide, surprised eyes. She could not believe what she was hearing. This man, who did not even know her name until a few minutes ago, was asking her to come into his house for breakfast. After everything that had happened to her, she had expected people to be cruel and turn her away. You really want to help me? Elizabeth asked, her voice still shaking from crying. Samuel nodded his head slowly. Yes, miss. Nobody should have to sleep in a barn, especially not a lady in a wedding dress. Come on, let's get you somewhere warm. Elizabeth tried to stand up, but her legs felt weak. She had not eaten anything since yesterday morning, and she was very tired from walking all night. Samuel saw that she was having trouble and gently took her arm to help her. Thank you, Elizabeth whispered. She was still afraid, but something about Samuel's kind eyes made her feel a little bit safe. They walked slowly from the barn to the small farmhouse. Elizabeth looked around at Samuel's property as they walked. She could see that he was very poor. The house needed paint, and there were holes in the roof. The yard was full of weeds, and everything looked old and broken. But it was clean, and she could tell that Samuel took care of what he had. Inside the house, Elizabeth was surprised by how neat and tidy everything was. The furniture was old and simple, but Samuel had kept it very clean. There were empty spaces on the walls where pictures used to hang and empty shelves where things used to sit. Elizabeth realized that Samuel had probably sold many of his belongings to get money. Please sit down at the table, Samuel said, pointing to a small wooden kitchen table with 2 chairs. I'll make you something to eat. Elizabeth sat down carefully, trying not to get the chair dirty with her wedding dress. She watched as Samuel moved around his small kitchen. He cracked 3 eggs into a pan and started cooking them. The smell made Elizabeth's stomach growl loudly because she was so hungry. I'm sorry, she said, embarrassed by the noise her stomach made. Samuel smiled for the first time since finding her. Don't be sorry for being hungry. When did you last eat? Yesterday morning, Elizabeth admitted. Before everything happened. Samuel poured her a cup of coffee and put it in front of her. Drink this. It will help warm you up. Elizabeth wrapped her cold hands around the warm coffee cup. She took a sip and made a face because the coffee was very bitter. Samuel noticed and felt bad. I'm sorry, I don't have any sugar or milk to make it taste better, he said. It's okay, Elizabeth said quickly. Thank you for sharing it with me. You don't have to give me anything. Samuel put the cooked eggs on a plate with a piece of bread and set it in front of Elizabeth. Eat, he said simply. Elizabeth looked at the food and then at Samuel. What About you? Aren't you going to eat too? Samuel sat down across from her with just a cup of coffee. I already ate. He lied. The truth was that giving Elizabeth these eggs meant he would have no eggs for himself today, but he could not let her go hungry. Elizabeth took a bite of the eggs and closed her eyes because they tasted so good. She was hungrier than she had ever been in her whole life. She ate quickly, trying not to seem greedy, but Samuel could see how much she needed the food. Slow down, Samuel said gently. The food isn't going anywhere. You'll make yourself sick if you eat too fast. As Elizabeth, Samuel studied her face. Even with her messy hair and dirty dress, he could see that she was very beautiful. Her green eyes were sad but intelligent, and her hands were soft, like someone who had never done hard work. Samuel could tell that she came from a wealthy family. Can you tell me what happened to you? Samuel asked carefully. Why were you sleeping in my barn in a wedding dress? Elizabeth stopped eating and looked down at her plate. Fresh tears came to her eyes. It's a long story, and I'm afraid you won't believe me. Try me, Samuel said in a kind voice. Elizabeth took a deep breath and began to tell her story. My name is Elizabeth Harper. My father owns a small shop in town that sells clothes and fabrics. We're not rich, but we have enough money to live comfortably. 3 months ago, I met a man named Robert Sterling at a church social. Samuel knew that name. The Sterling family was one of the wealthiest families in the county. Robert's father owned the biggest bank in town. Robert started visiting me every day, Elizabeth continued. He brought me flowers and told me I was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. He asked my father for permission to marry me, and my father was so happy. The Sterling family was much richer than us, and my father thought I would have a wonderful life. Elizabeth's voice became angry as she kept talking. My father spent all of his savings on my wedding dress and the wedding party. We invited everyone in town. I thought I was the luckiest girl in the world. What went wrong? Samuel asked, though he was already getting angry just listening to her story. Yesterday morning, just 1 hour before the wedding ceremony was supposed to start, Robert came to see me. All the guests were already at the church waiting. I was wearing this dress and feeling so happy. Elizabeth touched her dirty wedding dress sadly. Robert told me that his family had lost a lot of money in some bad business deals. He said they were almost poor now, and that he could not afford to marry a girl whose family didn't have money to help them. He said he needed to find a rich wife instead. Samuel's hands made fists on the table. He was very angry at Robert Sterling for treating Elizabeth this way. He told me this in front of my father and all my friends who had come to help me get ready, Elizabeth said, crying again. Everyone heard him say that I wasn't good enough anymore because I didn't have enough money. I was so embarrassed and hurt that I just ran away. I ran and ran until I couldn't run anymore, and then I found your barn. Samuel felt his heart break for this young woman. What about your father? Won't he be worried about you? Elizabeth shook her head. My father was so embarrassed by what happened, and he lost all his savings on the wedding. I heard him tell someone that he wished I had never been born because I caused him so much trouble and money. I can't go back home. He doesn't want me there. Samuel could not believe how cruel people had been to Elizabeth. In one day, she had lost her husband-to-be, her home, and her family's love. She had nowhere to go and no money to take care of herself. I'm so sorry, Samuel said quietly. No one should be treated the way you were treated. Elizabeth looked up at him with surprise. You believe me? You don't think I'm a bad person? Why would I think you're bad? Samuel asked. You didn't do anything wrong. The people who hurt you are the bad ones. For the first time since yesterday, Elizabeth smiled a little bit. This kind man was treating her better than her own family had. After Elizabeth finished telling her sad story, Samuel sat quietly for a few minutes. He was thinking about what he should do. This young woman had nowhere to go and no way to take care of herself. She was all alone in the world, just like he was. What will you do now? Samuel asked gently. Elizabeth wiped her eyes with her dirty wedding dress. I don't know. I thought maybe I could go to the big city and find work, but I don't know how to do anything useful. I can play piano and speak a little French, but those things don't help you get a job. Samuel could see that Elizabeth was scared about her future. She had been raised to be a rich man's wife, not to work and take care of herself. Going to the city alone would be very dangerous for her. "You could stay here," Samuel said suddenly. The words came out of his mouth before he really thought about them. Elizabeth looked at him with shock. "Stay here? But I'm a stranger. You don't even know me." Samuel felt his face get warm. "I know you're a good person who got hurt by bad people. I know you need help, and I know what it feels like to be alone. You could help me with the farm work, and I could give you food and a place to sleep." "But I don't know anything about farming," Elizabeth said. "I can teach you," Samuel replied. "It's not so hard once you learn, and I could really use the help. It's been difficult taking care of everything by myself." Elizabeth stared at Samuel like she could not believe what she was hearing. After everyone else had turned their backs on her, this poor man was offering to share what little he had. "I can't pay you much," Samuel added quickly. "Just food and a safe place to stay. But it would be honest work, and you wouldn't have to be afraid." Elizabeth felt tears come to her eyes again, but this time they were happy tears. "You would really do that for me? Even though people will talk badly about a white woman living on a black man's farm?" Samuel's face became serious. "Let them talk. I don't care what small-minded people think. You need help, and God put you in my barn for a reason." Elizabeth reached across the table and touched Samuel's rough hand with her soft one. "Thank you," she whispered. "You are the kindest man I have ever met." That afternoon, Samuel took Elizabeth around the farm to show her what needed to be done every day. First, they went to see Bessie the cow, who needed to be milked twice each day. "Don't be afraid of her," Samuel said as Elizabeth stood far away from the big cow. "Bessie is old and gentle. She won't hurt you." Elizabeth had never been close to a cow before. At first she was scared, but Samuel was patient with her. He showed her how to sit on the small stool and how to pull gently on Bessie's udders to make the milk come out. "It's harder than it looks," Elizabeth said, laughing as only a few drops of milk came out. "You'll get better with practice," Samuel said, smiling at the sound of her laughter. It had been a long time since he had heard laughter on his farm. Next, Samuel showed Elizabeth how to feed the 2 chickens and collect their eggs. The chickens made Elizabeth nervous because they flapped their wings and made loud noises, but Samuel taught her to move slowly and speak softly to them. "Animals can tell when you're afraid," Samuel explained. "If you're calm, they'll be calm too." By the end of the first week, Elizabeth was getting better at all the farm work. Her soft hands became rough and got small cuts from the work, but she never complained. Samuel was surprised by how hard she worked and how quickly she learned. In the evenings, after all the work was done, Samuel and Elizabeth would sit by the fireplace and talk. Elizabeth told Samuel about her life growing up in town, and Samuel told her stories about his life with Martha and about his dreams for the farm. "Martha would have liked you," Samuel said one evening. "She always said that a person's heart matters more than anything else, and you have a good heart." Elizabeth felt warm inside when Samuel said this. "I wish I could have met her. She sounds like she was a wonderful woman." "She was," Samuel said sadly. "I still miss her every day. Sometimes I talk to her like she's still here." "That's not strange," Elizabeth said softly. "Love doesn't die just because someone goes away. I think she probably listens to you." As the days passed, Samuel noticed that Elizabeth was becoming happier. She smiled more often and sometimes even sang while she worked. The farm felt more alive with her there. But the people in town were starting to notice that Elizabeth was living on Samuel's farm. When Samuel went to town to buy supplies, people stared at him and whispered to each other. Some of the white people were angry that a white woman was living with a black man. Even some of the black people thought Samuel was making trouble for himself. "You need to be careful, Samuel," warned his friend Moses, who worked at the general store. "Some folks are talking about causing trouble for you and that girl." Samuel felt worried, but when he looked at Elizabeth working happily in the garden, they had planted together. He knew he could not ask her to leave. She had nowhere else to go, and besides, he was starting to care about her more than he wanted to admit. One evening, As they sat by the fire reading one of Samuel's books, Elizabeth looked up at him and smiled. "I never thought I would say this, after what happened to me, but I'm happy here. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Samuel felt his heart beat faster when she said this. "I'm happy you're here too. The farm feels like a real home, again." They looked at each other for a long moment, and both of them felt something special passing between them. It was more than friendship, but neither of them was brave enough to say it out loud yet. Outside, the wind blew through the trees, and somewhere in town, people were making plans that would soon test whether Samuel and Elizabeth's growing love was strong enough to face the troubles that were coming their way. But for now, in the warm light of the fireplace, they were just two lonely people who had found comfort and happiness in each other's company. And that felt like the most precious thing in the world. 3 weeks had passed since Elizabeth came to live on Samuel's farm. The cold November wind was blowing hard, and winter was coming soon. Samuel was chopping wood behind the house when he heard a horse coming up the dirt road to his farm. Samuel stopped working and watched as a man on a beautiful black horse rode toward his house. The man was wearing expensive clothes and a fancy hat. Samuel's heart sank when he recognized who it was. Robert Sterling, the man who had left Elizabeth at the altar on their wedding day. Robert jumped down from his horse and tied it to Samuel's fence. He looked around the small farm with disgust on his face, like he smelled something bad. Then he saw Elizabeth hanging clothes on the line behind the house. "Elizabeth!" Robert called out in a loud, angry voice. "What are you doing in this place?" Elizabeth dropped the wet shirt she was holding and turned around quickly. When she saw Robert, her face became very pale and she started shaking. Samuel quickly put down his axe and walked over to stand between Robert and Elizabeth. "What do you want here?" Samuel asked in a calm but firm voice. Robert looked at Samuel with hatred in his eyes. "I'm here to take back what belongs to me," he said. "Elizabeth is supposed to be my wife." "I don't belong to anyone," Elizabeth said, finding her courage. She walked over to stand next to Samuel. "And I'm not supposed to be your wife. You made that very clear on our wedding day." Robert's face turned red with anger. "That was a mistake. My family's money problems are fixed now. We can get married like we planned." Samuel felt confused. "What do you mean your money problems are fixed?" Robert smiled in a mean way. "My uncle died last week and left us a lot of money. Now I can afford to marry Elizabeth after all." Elizabeth stared at Robert like she could not believe what she was hearing. "So you only want me back because you have money again? What about all the terrible things you said to me? What about how you embarrassed me in front of everyone?" "That's in the past," Robert said, waving his hand like it didn't matter. "Come on, get your things. We have a wedding to plan." "No," Elizabeth said firmly. "I won't go with you." Robert's eyes became very angry. He looked at Samuel and then back at Elizabeth. "You would rather stay here with this man than marry me and have a good life?" Samuel could see that Robert was about to say something very hurtful about him being black, but Elizabeth spoke first. "Yes, I would rather stay here. Samuel has treated me with more kindness and respect in 3 weeks than you showed me in 3 months. He is a better man than you will ever be." Robert's face became even redder. "You don't know what you're saying. You're confused. This man has probably filled your head with lies." "The only lies I heard were from you," Elizabeth shot back. "You said you loved me, but you only loved the idea of my father's money. When you thought that money was gone, you threw me away like garbage." Samuel felt proud of Elizabeth for standing up to Robert, but he was also worried. Robert came from a powerful family, and they could cause a lot of trouble. "Look," Robert said, trying to sound nice. "I know I made a mistake, but we can fix this. Elizabeth, think about what I'm offering you. A big house, beautiful clothes, servants to wait on you, and respect from everyone in town. What can this man give you? A life of poverty and shame." Samuel felt his heart break a little because he knew Robert was right about some things. He was poor, and he could not give Elizabeth the comfortable life that Robert could offer. Maybe she would be better off with Robert, even if Robert was not a good man. Elizabeth, Samuel said quietly. Maybe you should think about what he's saying. I can't give you much. Life here will always be hard. Elizabeth turned to look at Samuel with surprise and hurt in her eyes. Are you telling me to go with him? Samuel looked down at the ground. I'm telling you to think about your future. You deserve to have a good life. I have a good life here, Elizabeth said, her voice getting louder. I have work that matters, and I have someone who cares about me for who I am, not for what I can give him. Robert stepped closer to Elizabeth. Don't be foolish. People in town are already talking about you living here. Soon they will make life very difficult for both of you. Come with me now, and we can forget this whole thing ever happened. What do you mean people are talking? Elizabeth asked. Robert smiled meanly again. Some of the men in town are very angry about a white woman living with a black man. They think it's wrong and shameful. If you don't come with me, they might do something to hurt both of you. Samuel felt fear in his stomach. He had heard the whispers in town, but he didn't know that people were angry enough to cause real trouble. Are you threatening us? Samuel asked. I'm not threatening anyone, Robert said. I'm just telling you the truth. People are upset, and I might not be able to protect you if Elizabeth doesn't come with me. Elizabeth grabbed Samuel's arm. He's lying. He's just trying to scare us. But Samuel could see in Robert's eyes that he was not lying about the danger. Samuel had lived in this town his whole life, and he knew how some people thought. They would not accept a white woman and a black man living together, even if nothing wrong was happening. That night, after Robert left with more threats and promises to come back the next day, Samuel and Elizabeth sat by the fire in silence. Both of them were thinking about what Robert had said. Are you really thinking about sending me away? Elizabeth asked sadly. Samuel looked at her beautiful face in the firelight. I'm thinking about keeping you safe. If something happened to you because of me, I could never forgive myself. Nothing will happen to me, Elizabeth said. We'll face whatever comes together. Samuel wanted to believe her, but he was scared. He loved Elizabeth more than he had ever loved anyone except Martha. But love might not be enough to protect her from the hatred of angry people. Maybe Robert is right, Samuel said quietly. Maybe you would be safer and happier with him. Elizabeth moved closer to Samuel and took his hands in hers. Listen to me carefully. I would rather face danger with you than live safely without you. Don't you understand? I love you, Samuel Washington. Samuel felt his heart stop. She loved him. This beautiful, kind woman loved him. But that just made everything more complicated and dangerous. Samuel stared at Elizabeth with wide eyes. She had just told him that she loved him. His heart was beating so fast that he thought it might stop. No one had said those words to him since Martha died 3 years ago. Elizabeth, Samuel whispered, do you really mean that? I have never meant anything more in my whole life, Elizabeth said, squeezing his hands tighter. I love your kind heart. I love how hard you work. I love how you treat me like I matter. I love everything about you. Samuel felt tears come to his eyes. I love you too. I have loved you for weeks, but I was afraid to say it. I thought you could never love someone like me. Someone like you? Elizabeth asked, confused. You mean someone who is good and honest and brave? I mean someone who is poor and black, Samuel said sadly. Elizabeth, even if we love each other, we can't be together. It's against the law for us to get married. People will try to hurt us or even kill us. Elizabeth stood up and started walking around the small room. She was thinking hard about something. What if we left this place? What if we went somewhere far away where people don't know us? Samuel shook his head. This farm is all I have. It's been in my family for 50 years. I can't just leave it. Then we'll stay and fight, Elizabeth said with fire in her eyes. I'm tired of running away from problems. I ran away from Robert and I ran away from my father. I won't run away from love. Samuel stood up and took Elizabeth in his arms. You are the bravest woman I have ever known, but I can't let you get hurt because of me. Elizabeth looked up into Samuel's eyes. Don't you understand? I'm already hurt. I've been hurt my whole life by people who only cared about money and what other people think. You are the first person who has ever truly cared about me. I won't give that up." They held each other close by the firelight, both of them knowing that their love was dangerous but not caring anymore. The next morning, Samuel woke up with an idea that was crazy, but might work. He found Elizabeth in the kitchen making breakfast, with the last of their eggs. "I know what we have to do," Samuel said excitedly. "We have to get married right away before Robert comes back and before the people in town can stop us." Elizabeth almost dropped the pan she was holding. "Married? But you said it was against the law." "It's against the law in this state," Samuel explained. "But I know a place 2 states away where a black man and white woman can get married, and I know a minister there who will do it." Elizabeth's heart started beating fast with excitement and fear. "When would we go?" "Tonight," Samuel said. "We'll leave in the dark and travel all night. We can be married at sunrise." Elizabeth thought about this plan. It was dangerous and scary, but it was also romantic and brave. "What about the farm? What about Robert?" "The farm will still be here when we get back," Samuel said. "And once we're married, Robert can't do anything. A married woman belongs to her husband, not to some man who left her." Elizabeth threw her arms around Samuel's neck. "Yes, let's do it. Let's get married." They spent the whole day getting ready for their secret trip. Samuel hitched up his old wagon and put blankets in the back to keep them warm during the long, cold ride. Elizabeth packed her few belongings, including the wedding dress that had brought her to Samuel's barn. "I want to wear it," she told Samuel when he saw her folding the white dress. It was always meant for a wedding, just not the wedding everyone expected. That afternoon, Samuel put on his best clothes. They were not fancy like Robert's clothes, but they were clean and neat. Elizabeth washed her hair and braided it with wild flowers she found growing near the house. As the sun started to go down, Samuel and Elizabeth climbed into the wagon. Samuel's hands were shaking as he picked up the reins to make the horse start walking. "Are you scared?" Elizabeth asked. "Terrified," Samuel admitted, "but also happier than I have been in years. What about you?" "I'm scared too," Elizabeth said. "But I would rather be scared with you than safe without you." They rode through the night, taking back roads so no one would see them. The moon was bright, and they could see the road clearly. Elizabeth snuggled close to Samuel to stay warm, and they talked quietly about their dreams for the future. "I want to fix up the farmhouse," Elizabeth said. "I want to plant a big garden and maybe get some more chickens. I want to build you a real bedroom with glass windows and a soft bed," Samuel said. "You deserve beautiful things." "I don't need beautiful things," Elizabeth replied. "I just need you." As the sun began to rise, they reached the small town where Minister Johnson lived. He was an old black man who had agreed to marry them despite the danger it could bring to all of them. "Love is God's greatest gift," Minister Johnson told them as they stood in his tiny church. "I won't let anyone's hatred stop God's love." Elizabeth had changed into her wedding dress in the minister's house. Even though it was wrinkled and had small tears from her time in the barn, she looked beautiful. Samuel wore his best shirt and the tie that had belonged to his father. There were no other people in the church, no flowers, and no music. But as Samuel and Elizabeth held hands and promised to love each other forever, it felt like the most perfect wedding in the world. "Do you, Samuel Washington, take Elizabeth Harper to be your wife, to love and protect her for all your days?" Minister Johnson asked. "I do," Samuel said, his voice strong and sure. "Do you, Elizabeth Harper, take Samuel Washington to be your husband, to love and stand by him through whatever comes?" "I do," Elizabeth said, tears of joy running down her face. "Then by the power given to me by God and the state, I pronounce you husband and wife," Minister Johnson said with a big smile. "Samuel, you may kiss your bride." Samuel and Elizabeth kissed as the morning sun shone through the church windows. They were married now. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. As they rode back toward home in their old wagon, Elizabeth Washington looked at her new husband and smiled. "No matter what Robert or anyone else tries to do to us, we're a family now." "Samuel," squeezed his wife's hand. The best family, he agreed. And for the first time in 3 years, Samuel Washington felt like the luckiest man in the world.